Barack Obama's criticism that Donald Trump cares only about his ego, his money, and his status reflects a broader argument about leadership, responsibility, and the contrast between personal ambition and public service. When Obama makes this claim, he is not simply attacking Trump as an individual. He is pointing to a pattern of behavior that he believes demonstrates a lack of genuine concern for ordinary Americans. According to Obama, leadership requires humility, empathy, and a willingness to put the needs of others first. He argues that Trump has repeatedly done the opposite, using political power as a platform to elevate his personal brand, defend his own image, and accumulate prestige, rather than working to solve real problems faced by citizens. This, in Obama's view, explains everything from Trump's policy choices to the tone he sets in political discourse. Obama suggests that when a leader is driven primarily by ego, decisions become centered on self-preservation rather than long-term national benefit, which can harm institutions, create division, and weaken trust in government. Obama reinforces this point by referencing Trump's tendency to commercialize his identity through products and branding efforts, from luxury merchandise to high-priced memorabilia. These examples are not mentioned to mock Trump's business ventures, but to highlight what Obama perceives as a deeper issue, a world view where everything, including politics, is transactional. For Obama, this signals that Trump approaches the presidency the same way he approaches business opportunities, as something to monetize and use for personal gain. By emphasizing this behavior, Obama attempts to illustrate how Trump's priorities are misaligned with the responsibilities of serving as president. He implies that when leaders chase wealth and status, they neglect the everyday struggles of people who rely on government to provide stability, fairness, and opportunity. Furthermore, Obama argues that self-centered leadership can distort the policymaking process. In his view, if a leader's primary concern is maintaining personal power or elevating their own reputation, then decisions about taxation, healthcare, education, or national security may be influenced by what benefits the individual or their closest allies rather than what benefits the majority of citizens. Obama's critique suggests that this dynamic results in policies that favor wealthy individuals and political insiders while leaving working families behind. A leader focused on ego, he contends, may prioritize flashy announcements or headline-grabbing actions instead of meaningful reforms that require difficult trade-offs, compromise, or long-term planning. This creates an environment where symbolism replaces substance, and where the pursuit of personal validation overshadows the pursuit of national progress. Obama also connects Trump's focus on ego to the culture of division he believes Trump fuels. According to Obama, political leaders who crave constant affirmation may resort to attacking critics, belittling opponents, or fostering conflict as a way to energize supporters and assert dominance. In this narrative, unity becomes secondary to the need for applause. Obama argues that such behavior is especially dangerous because it encourages citizens to see political disagreements as personal battles rather than differences of opinion. When leaders prioritize their own status, they may frame any form of dissent as an attack that must be countered, creating a cycle of hostility that fractures the nation and undermines democratic norms. Another key element of Obama's argument is the belief that leadership grounded in ego lacks the capacity for introspection and accountability. Obama has long emphasized the importance of admitting mistakes, seeking expert input, and learning from challenges. In contrast, he claims that Trump struggles to acknowledge errors or accept responsibility, instead deflecting blame or rewriting events to protect his image. Obama warns that this mindset prevents growth and makes it difficult for a leader to respond constructively to crises, whether those crises involve public health, economic instability, or foreign policy. A leader who views every situation through the lens of personal reputation, Obama argues, may hesitate to take necessary but unpopular actions, ultimately putting the public at risk. For Obama, the issue is not only about Trump, but about the broader implications for American democracy. He suggests that when ego-driven leadership becomes normalized, it weakens the core values that hold the country together: integrity, accountability, and service. Obama's warning is that if citizens accept leaders who prioritize themselves over the public, it becomes harder to restore trust in institutions and harder to unite communities around shared goals. By raising this point, Obama aims to encourage voters to reflect on what qualities they value in a president and to consider whether those qualities align with the responsibilities of governing. Ultimately, Obama's statement that Trump cares mainly about his ego, his money, and his status serves as a summary of his broader critique that effective leadership requires more than ambition or charisma. It requires character, empathy, and a commitment to serving others. Obama frames the issue as a choice between self-serving politics and public-serving leadership, urging Americans to support leaders who prioritize the nation above themselves. Obama's point about Trump selling products like gold sneakers, a $100,000 watch, and even a Trump-branded Bible is meant to illustrate a deeper argument about how Trump treats political power as an extension of his personal brand rather than a tool for serving the public. Obama emphasizes that these products are not random business ventures. They symbolize a mindset in which influence, leadership, and even moral authority become commodities to be packaged, marketed, and sold. According to Obama, this pattern reveals a leader who uses public attention not to promote civic responsibility or national unity, but to create profitable opportunities that elevate his image and reinforce his persona. It suggests that Trump blends politics with commercial theatrics, blurring the lines between public service and personal enrichment. Obama's critique also focuses on the broader cultural message behind such commercialization. The decision to sell high-priced luxury items, especially while appealing to working-class supporters, highlights what Obama sees as a disconnect between Trump's brand and the lives of ordinary Americans. Many people struggle to afford basic necessities, health care, or education, yet Trump markets products that only the wealthy can buy. This, Obama argues, demonstrates a leadership style that glamorizes wealth and fame rather than addressing genuine societal challenges. By pointing to these examples, Obama aims to show that Trump's political identity is built less on policy solutions and more on maintaining a celebrity-like aura that fuels admiration and financial gain. At a deeper level, Obama suggests that the marketing of these products reflects a pattern of reducing significant social symbols into items of personal profit. For example, selling a Bible, an object many consider sacred, turns a spiritual text into a branded product connected to a political figure. Obama frames this as particularly troubling because it signals the erosion of boundaries between faith, politics, and commercialism. Instead of encouraging moral reflection, unity, or compassion, this approach turns deeply held values into merchandise, diluting their meaning. For Obama, this is symptomatic of a world where even the most important cultural pillars become tools for personal branding. Additionally, Obama uses these commercial examples to argue that Trump's priorities are fundamentally transactional. The consistent promotion of merchandise reveals a focus on monetizing attention rather than using influence to uplift communities or invest in long-term solutions. Obama implies that Trump's approach to leadership is based on short-term gain, generating excitement, creating buzz, and turning supporters into customers. This, in Obama's view, limits Trump's ability to respond effectively to national crises or address systemic issues. because the mindset behind branding is centered on presentation rather than substance. Leaders who sell spectacle, Obama argues, often struggle to deliver meaningful progress. Another theme in Obama's critique is the idea that Trump's commercialization strategy feeds into a cycle of self-promotion. Every new product, announcement, or viral moment reinforces Trump's status as a brand rather than a public servant. This constant focus on promoting products keeps Trump in the spotlight, ensuring his name remains part of the cultural conversation. Obama warns that this strategy can overshadow legitimate political debates, turning elections and governance into entertainment. When leaders prioritize personal publicity, important national discussions, such as healthcare reform, education funding, or economic inequality, risk being reduced to background noise. Obama also highlights the ethical implications of using political influence to market luxury goods. Leaders wield immense power and public trust, and using that trust to sell items can create conflicts of interest or raise questions about integrity. Even if the products are legal, the underlying message is that public influence can be leveraged for private benefit. Obama contrasts this with the traditional understanding of public service, where leaders are expected to separate personal gain from national duty. According to him, when those boundaries collapse, corruption becomes easier to rationalize and harder to detect, and the public grows more cynical about politics. Furthermore, Obama's point about Trump's merchandise ties into a larger argument about authenticity. He suggests that Trump's focus on selling things, projects, an image-based version of leadership rather than one grounded in principles or policies. Luxury sneakers, gold-plated items, and high-priced memorabilia create an illusion of success and status, which can be appealing but ultimately shallow. Obama argues that this kind of leadership values appearances over results, showmanship over sincerity. The danger, he claims, is that voters may be persuaded by the spectacle rather than evaluating a leader's real impact on their lives. Obama also implies that Trump's product sales reflect a broader cultural shift where politics becomes intertwined with celebrity identity. In such a system, leaders are rewarded for entertainment value rather than competence. This creates an environment where the loudest or most dramatic voices receive the most attention, even when their ideas lack depth. Obama warns that this environment is unsustainable for a functioning democracy because it reduces citizens to spectators rather than participants, and it elevates personality-driven politics over thoughtful policymaking. Finally, Obama uses these examples to underscore the importance of distinguishing between leadership and performance. Selling branded products may generate excitement, but it does not address issues like unemployment, inflation, public safety, or global stability. Obama argues that when leaders prioritize personal branding over public duty, society suffers because attention is diverted from real challenges. He urges voters to recognize the difference between charisma and competence, reminding them that the role of a president is to guide a nation, not to run a personal marketplace. Obama's third key point, that power to Donald Trump is nothing more than a means to personal gain rather than a tool for public service, reflects a central concern about the motivations behind political leadership and the implications of self-serving governance. Obama emphasizes that political authority is fundamentally a responsibility, a commitment to make decisions that prioritize the welfare of the nation over individual ambitions. In contrast, he argues that Trump treats power as an instrument for elevating his personal status, enriching himself financially, and consolidating influence. This distinction is crucial because the way a leader perceives power shapes every action they take, from the policies they champion to the rhetoric they employ. Obama portrays Trump's understanding of power as transactional, Every opportunity is evaluated in terms of what it can yield for him personally rather than how it can benefit citizens, communities, or the nation as a whole. Obama develops this argument by examining the ways in which Trump has leveraged his position for self-interest. Throughout his career, Trump has used public office to enhance his brand, reward loyal associates, and gain visibility, often prioritizing moves that reinforce his personal image over substantive policy outcomes. Obama suggests that this pattern extends to presidential decisions, where choices are filtered through the lens of personal advantage. For instance, decisions about appointments, legislation, or international negotiation may be guided less by considerations of merit or national interest, and more by who benefits Trump or his inner circle. This, according to Obama, undermines the integrity of democratic institutions because it substitutes public service with self-promotion. A central element of Obama's critique is the idea that transactional leadership erodes trust. When citizens perceive that their leaders are motivated primarily by personal gain, faith in government weakens. Obama stresses that the legitimacy of political authority depends on the belief that those in power are working for the common good. If leaders pursue policies that disproportionately benefit themselves, wealthy allies, or corporate donors, the social contract is broken and political cynicism grows. Obama's concern is that Trump's approach fosters this skepticism, encouraging citizens to question whether their voices or needs are truly represented in decision-making processes. In essence, when power is a tool for self-interest, democracy itself is at risk. Obama also links this notion of personal gain to the broader consequences for society. Leaders who use power primarily for self-enrichment often make short-sighted decisions. The focus on immediate benefits for the individual or their close associates can eclipse long-term planning, sustainability, and systemic improvement. Obama argues that Trump's leadership style exemplifies this problem. Policies may be designed to generate quick wins, headlines, or financial advantages rather than addressing deep-seated challenges like healthcare access, income inequality, or climate change. In this framework, power becomes a vehicle for spectacle and profit, rather than a mechanism for meaningful, lasting change that benefits all citizens. Another aspect of Obama's point is the contrast between transactional and transformational leadership. Transformational leaders aim to inspire, unite, and uplift, leveraging their authority to advance collective goals. Obama suggests that Trump, by treating power as a personal asset, operates in the opposite mode. Transactional leadership focuses on immediate rewards, exchanges, and reinforcement of status. The result is a political environment in which loyalty is purchased, achievements are measured by visibility rather than impact, and governance is subordinated to personal objectives. This distinction is critical for citizens to understand, as it affects how policies are formulated, implemented, and perceived. Obama further emphasizes that this focus on personal gain affects not just policy outcomes, but also the tone and culture of governance. Leaders who view power as a means to self-interest may adopt combative or divisive rhetoric, framing every challenge or disagreement as a threat to their authority rather than as an opportunity for collaboration or compromise. Obama argues that Trump's political style exemplifies this tendency, cultivating an us versus them mentality that prioritizes loyalty to the leader over institutional norms or collective problem solving. This, in turn, can polarize society, discourage constructive dialogue, and weaken democratic cohesion. The issue of accountability also arises from Obama's argument. If power is treated as a tool for personal enrichment, leaders are less likely to accept responsibility for failures or missteps. Obama notes that such an approach encourages deflection, blame, shifting, and a lack of transparency, as admitting mistakes could undermine personal advantage. This undermines the principles of good governance, where leaders are expected to face challenges openly, learn from errors, and adapt policies in response to evidence. Obama frames Trump's transactional use of power as inconsistent with these principles, warning that it creates a governance model where image and influence are prioritized over honesty, competence, and public service. Additionally, Obama suggests that this approach to power affects not only the immediate administration, but the broader political culture. When leaders demonstrate that office can be exploited for personal benefit, it sets a precedent that may encourage similar behavior among successors or subordinates. Obama implies that the normalization of self-serving leadership risks institutional decay, eroding ethical standards, and diminishing the capacity of government to address societal needs effectively. Citizens, in turn, may become disillusioned or disengaged, perceiving politics as a game for the ambitious rather than a forum for collective problem solving. Finally, Obama's critique underscores the moral dimension of leadership. Treating power as a personal tool reflects a world view in which ethical obligations to others are secondary to self-interest. Obama contrasts this with the idea that leadership is fundamentally about stewardship, holding power on behalf of the people, using it responsibly, and making sacrifices when necessary to serve the greater good. By highlighting Trump's transactional approach, Obama encourages citizens to evaluate candidates not solely on charisma, popularity, or promises, but on their demonstrated commitment to serving others and prioritizing public interest over personal gain. This argument positions the use of power not as a privilege for the individual, but as a sacred responsibility with tangible consequences for society at large. Obama's fourth key point focuses on the impact of Trump's leadership style and policies on everyday Americans, particularly the middle class and vulnerable groups. He argues that when a leader prioritizes personal gain, ego, and status over public service, the consequences are not abstract. They directly affect people's lives, economic stability, and social security. Obama's critique emphasizes that policy decisions are not neutral. They reflect the priorities, values, and intentions of those in power. When a leader is motivated by self-interest rather than public welfare, policies are more likely to favor wealthy individuals and corporate insiders while leaving working families and marginalized communities behind. According to Obama, this is a fundamental concern for anyone evaluating the real-world effects of political leadership, because governance should aim to provide opportunity, fairness, and protection to all citizens, not just those who are already privileged. One of the ways Obama illustrates this point is by examining economic policy. He notes that Trump's tax policies, regulatory decisions, and economic initiatives often disproportionately benefit the wealthy and connected elites, while offering limited relief or opportunity for middle and lower income families. For instance, tax cuts may favor investors, business owners, and high-income individuals, creating a system in which economic growth appears on paper but is not experienced equitably across society. Obama stresses that a leader focused on self-interest may prioritize policies that yield immediate political or financial gain rather than address systemic challenges, such as wage stagnation, job insecurity, or affordable health care. This approach, he warns, can widen social inequalities and erode the economic foundation of the majority of citizens. Healthcare policy is another area where Obama's concern is evident. He often points out that vulnerable populations, including children, the elderly, and low-income families, may face disproportionate risks under policies that prioritize cost, cutting for the wealthy or private insurers over public accessibility. According to Obama, Leadership that treats power as a tool for personal advancement tends to view public programs and services as burdens rather than opportunities to improve citizens' quality of life. This mindset can result in decisions that reduce access to essential services, weaken protections, or fail to address the needs of those who rely most heavily on government support. For Obama, the consequences are tangible. Real families may lose health care coverage, struggle with mounting medical debt, or face barriers to preventive care because the leader in power has not prioritized the common good. Obama also raises the issue of women's rights and social protections. He notes that policies impacting reproductive health, workplace equality, and social safety nets are often vulnerable under leadership that is motivated more by ego and personal alliances than by justice or equity. For example, attacks on reproductive rights or efforts to roll back gender protections may reflect not a principled policy argument, but a calculation to appeal to certain constituencies or enhance political power. Obama frames this as an example of how self-serving leadership can disproportionately affect vulnerable populations, particularly those who lack political or economic leverage. Decisions made without genuine concern for public welfare often have cumulative consequences, exacerbating existing inequalities and limiting social mobility. Education is another domain where Obama highlights the effects of ego-driven leadership. Policies that favor privatization, underfunding of public schools, or inequitable resource allocation often emerge when leaders focus on personal gain or ideological alignment rather than public need. Obama emphasizes that the middle class and disadvantaged communities are most affected by such decisions, as they rely heavily on robust public education systems for opportunity and upward mobility. When leadership is transactional, the quality and accessibility of education may decline, perpetuating cycles of inequality and limiting the nation's long-term economic and social growth. Obama also underscores the ethical dimension of these policies. He argues that when leaders are primarily concerned with their own benefit, the moral imperative to protect and uplift citizens becomes secondary. Public office is intended to serve as a platform for improving society, safeguarding rights, and promoting fairness. Decisions guided by self-interest, however, reflect a prioritization of power over principle. This, Obama warns, risks not only immediate harm to citizens, but also long-term damage to democratic norms, trust in institutions, and social cohesion. Citizens may feel abandoned or marginalized, which can lead to political disengagement or frustration, further weakening the democratic system. Another aspect of Obama's point concerns the international implications of ego-driven leadership. Policies influenced by personal gain can affect trade, diplomacy, and global partnerships in ways that ultimately harm domestic citizens. For example, unilateral decisions motivated by personal or political advantage may destabilize international markets, disrupt supply chains, or strain alliances critical to national security. Obama frames this as a direct extension of the principle that leaders' priorities matter. When power is used for self-interest rather than collective benefit, the consequences ripple far beyond the immediate sphere of influence, impacting both ordinary citizens and the nation's global standing. Obama also highlights the social and psychological impact of leadership that prioritizes ego and self-interest. Policies and rhetoric that disregard the needs of everyday Americans can contribute to feelings of marginalization, disenfranchisement, and disillusionment. People may perceive the political system as rigged, unfair, or unresponsive, which can reduce civic engagement, foster resentment, and erode national unity. According to Obama, leadership that ignores the welfare of the middle class and vulnerable groups undermines not just material well-being, but also social cohesion and shared identity. both of which are essential for a healthy democracy. Finally, Obama emphasizes the importance of choosing leaders who demonstrate a genuine commitment to the public good. He contrasts Trump's approach, which he frames as self-serving, with the ideal of leadership that balances ambition with empathy, skill with responsibility, and decision-making with moral consideration. For Obama, evaluating a leader requires looking beyond rhetoric, image, or immediate popularity to examine whether their policies, priorities, and behaviors genuinely serve the people. When leadership is self-interested, ordinary citizens, the middle class, the marginalized, and future generations bear the cost, highlighting the critical role of informed, engaged voters in safeguarding the welfare and integrity of the nation. Obama's fifth key point centers on the way Donald Trump promotes division through rhetoric that frames politics as an us versus them struggle, creating societal polarization rather than fostering unity. Obama emphasizes that leadership carries not only the responsibility of governing, but also the moral obligation to unite citizens under common goals and shared values. By contrast, he argues, Trump consistently frames political debates, social issues, and national challenges as battles between groups, often defining loyalty to him as a marker of real citizenship while dismissing or vilifying dissenters. This approach, Obama warns, undermines the social cohesion necessary for effective governance and erodes the trust that allows democratic institutions to function. When a leader prioritizes division over consensus, the focus shifts from solving shared problems to cultivating fear, resentment, and antagonism, creating long-term harm for both the political system and society at large. Obama illustrates this dynamic by pointing to the ways in which Trump rallies his base using exclusionary language and identity-based appeals. Instead of encouraging Americans to collaborate across political or cultural lines, Trump's rhetoric often emphasizes conflict, framing issues as zero-sum contests in which one group's gain necessitates another's loss. Obama argues that this strategy may be effective for maintaining political loyalty or energizing supporters, but it comes at a steep cost. Divisive leadership deepens social fractures, discourages dialogue, and fosters an environment in which compromise and understanding are seen as weaknesses. In such a climate, progress becomes more difficult to achieve because individuals and groups are entrenched in opposition rather than working toward collective solutions. Furthermore, Obama connects this divisive approach to a broader concern about the health of democracy. He notes that democracies rely on citizens' ability to debate, negotiate, and collaborate while respecting differences of opinion. When leaders emphasize antagonism and personal loyalty over shared civic responsibility, these foundational norms are threatened. According to Obama, Trump's us versus them strategy encourages citizens to view each other not as fellow participants in a democratic society, but as obstacles or enemies. This polarization, he warns, can manifest in diminished civic engagement, heightened social tensions, and even political violence, all of which compromise the functioning of democratic institutions. Obama also highlights the impact of divisive leadership on public policy. Policies crafted in a climate of hostility and partisanship tend to reflect ideological signaling rather than careful problem solving. When the primary goal is to energize a political base or score rhetorical points against opponents, substantive policy measures may be neglected, watered down, or implemented inconsistently. Obama suggests that Trump's approach, by framing every issue in adversarial terms, creates an environment in which policy decisions are less about public benefit and more about demonstrating dominance or undermining perceived enemies. The result is governance that is reactive, confrontational, and often disconnected from the real needs of citizens. A critical aspect of Obama's argument is the social consequences of this rhetoric. By fostering a culture of division, Trump contributes to societal anxiety, mistrust, and fragmentation. Citizens may become more suspicious of one another, less willing to collaborate, and more susceptible to misinformation that confirms existing biases. Obama argues that this not only undermines social cohesion, but also limits collective problem solving. Challenges like climate change, public health crises, and economic inequality require broad-based cooperation. A polarized society struggles to mobilize the collective effort necessary to address these issues. Leadership that thrives on division, therefore, hampers the nation's ability to respond effectively to both immediate crises and long-term challenges. Obama also stresses the moral and ethical dimensions of divisive rhetoric. Leaders shape the tone of public discourse and set examples for how disagreements are managed. When those in power resort to vilification, fear, mongering, or exclusionary language, they signal that such behavior is acceptable, even desirable. Obama contends that this normalizes hostility in political and social interactions, eroding civility, empathy, and mutual respect. The consequences extend beyond politics, affecting workplaces, communities, and public institutions where collaboration and trust are essential. Leadership that prioritizes division, therefore, is not only a political problem, but a social and ethical one. Another dimension of Obama's point concerns the long-term implications for national identity. He argues that a society fractured into opposing camps struggles to cultivate a shared sense of purpose, citizenship, and belonging. When leaders define patriotism or loyalty narrowly as support for a particular individual or faction, they risk alienating large segments of the population and weakening the bonds that hold a diverse nation together. According to Obama, a healthy democracy requires leaders who can articulate a vision that encompasses all citizens, even those with differing views, and who can inspire collective action without relying on fear or division. Trump's approach, by contrast, reinforces separation and prioritizes allegiance over common interest. Obama also addresses the psychological impact of divisive leadership. Constant exposure to us versus them messaging can heighten stress, anxiety, and social tension among citizens. It can create a sense of insecurity and competition, where people feel they must defend themselves or their group against perceived threats. This psychological climate, Obama argues, can weaken the social fabric, making cooperation more difficult and fostering resentment and hostility. A leader who thrives on division amplifies these effects, creating an environment where fear and mistrust are the default responses to disagreement or difference. Finally, Obama's critique emphasizes the importance of choosing leaders who unite rather than divide. He frames the choice as fundamental to the well-being of both the nation and its democratic institutions. Leadership should prioritize inclusion, dialogue, and collective problem solving, fostering trust and shared responsibility. By highlighting Trump's us versus them rhetoric, Obama encourages citizens to consider not only the immediate political consequences of division, but also the long-term social, ethical, and institutional costs. In essence, he argues that unity is not merely an abstract ideal, but a practical necessity for effective governance, social cohesion, and the preservation of democratic values, and that leadership that promotes division undermines the very foundations of the nation.